Hello, and thanks for joining the FrostySith channel today. The holidays are upon us. We've got Christmas and Hanukkah and Festivus right around the corner. And so what better time than to take a few minutes and to review the best of 2019 outdoor landscape photos that we've taken here on the FrostySith channel. So stay tuned and we're going to dive right in. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, take a minute and go ahead and do it, and watch to the end. And if you like it, give a thumbs up and give a comment or a shout out if you have opinions. Here we go. Okay, so we've got a series of photos. I took thousands of photos in 2019 since getting my Lumix G95 camera. Most of the photos were taken with either a 15mm prime lens, fast f1.7 lens, or the 12mm to 60mm kit lens. I did also get a long telephoto lens late in the year, and you'll see one image from that. But most of the images were taken on either the 12 to 60 kit lens or the 15mm prime. So I think we've got 16 photos here to talk about, and let's just dive in. They're not in an exactly ranked order, but certainly the top 3 or 4 are my 4 favorite. And we're going to start with number 16. And this is an image that was taken in the fall, a technique that I watched Adam Gibbs use. I could be messing this up, but I think he calls it intentional motion capture. And was just having a tough day that day finding good compositions given the lighting that we had and the general subject matter. And so what you're actually looking at here is some sand plums in the fall where I intentionally moved the camera during the exposure, and I really like this one because it gives me a sense of a painting. I think if this were printed on canvas and hung, it would be difficult for most people to look at it and say, oh, that's a photograph. And I like the color blending, I like just everything about it. It's not complicated, except you just have to take a lot of photos and then, you know, have an eye to try and capture that. And it's the only intentional motion capture image that we're going to look at here, and partly because it was a new technique for me, but I really do like the photo. So let's move now to this photo, which was also taken in the early winter. And at first it seems a little maybe like, what's the subject? And I think that these are the kind of images that are out there for you to see when you're outside in nature, and oftentimes we all just walk by them and we never slow down to notice some of the things. And one of the things that you may notice is that there are some areas where the sand appears to be quite a bit whiter in certain areas, like along this ridge here, over here, even the top side of this bobcat print. You can see there's some white grains there. What that really is frost that was fleeting very quickly as I was taking the photo. A video of it would have been pretty interesting. But it's actually frost, and the temperature is just at that condition where the frost is effectively subliming away in the photo. But there are a couple other things in the photo that I really like. First off, there is a foreground focus, which for me were these tracks in the sand. You've got a couple things that you can see the wind has exposed. out of the sand. If we move up to the center of the photo, which is still in focus, we can see that we're moving up this tiny little sand dune. And if you look, once you start looking at it, your eye will notice some things that are pretty interesting. And so here's this insect that is hunkered down, you know, probably waiting for the temperature to get high enough that it's comfortable to move and fly around and go do its thing. And then the background, you can tell that, you know, we're in some kind of an area where there is debris. And in fact, this is on a lake shore. Is where this is at. And I just really like the photo. And it's something that I would print, hang, and look at. And I also enjoy putting together wallpapers for the photos that I really enjoy looking at. And hopefully by the first quarter of 2020, we'll get the FrostySith.com website up and offer some Windows wallpapers to people who are interested in that. So that's number 15. Number 14 is the single image in this set that was captured with a lens other than the 15mm prime or the 12 to 60mm kit lens, and that would be the 100 to 400mm lens, Lumix lens that I have for taking shots of the moon. And so this is the November 2019 full moon on November 12th, and it turned out pretty good. And it, you know, it's not as sharp as I would like. You know, if it were up to me, I'd want to be able to zoom in and see, you know, very specific things. However, you know, I have an interest in everything outdoors related, including the moon and the stars and all that, but that's not really my myopic focus. And so I'm not going to be investing in deep space photography equipment, or at least I don't have any plan to today. But it is quite amazing what you can do with, you know, just a simple camera and lens to see the moon and a lot of its character that is difficult to see with the naked eye. I mean, a lot of times you can look up and you can see these big patches, but you have difficulty seeing all these striations and some of the other detail, and, you know, these craters on the edge of the moon when it's silhouette that way. So I just think it's one of my top picks, and it's the only lunar pick that I'm including in the 2019 set. Now, these next two images are of the same subject. This is an outdoor day activity that I did with friends and family, and we were at a Sandhill State Park and ran across one of the largest praying mantis, maybe the largest praying mantis I've ever seen. It was about 8 inches long. This is one angle of it, and that was taken with the 12 to 60, and this is on the 60mm setting, f8, 1/160th of a second on ISO 100. And I just think it's a great image. I just love it. I love it. I love the bokeh. I love the detail in the antenna. I love the colors. And this is not color modified, so I haven't went in and, you know, this is the natural way it presented in the photo. And I think that's really cool. And I think, you know, these jaws are really interesting. It looks like something out of Aliens, you know, if it opened this up, or Predator actually. More than Aliens, but the movie Predators really reminds me of this jaw structure. But you know, that's real. That's what it was out there in nature. And the next one is just a different angle, kind of showing the sprawling length. And I know scale is difficult here, but you know, from one end of him to the other, he's about 8 inches long, more or less, and really camouflage well into the late fall foliage and the sticks, obviously. But just a wonderful, wonderful image to look at. I'm glad. And these are the kind of things that if you don't get out, if you always sit at the workstation and grind away on things, you'll never get to see these kinds of subjects out in nature. And if you don't slow down enough while you're out there, you won't see them either. You'll just blow right by this stuff. And so, you know, getting out, going slow, steady, and just being observant, you can run into these kind of opportunities. So I think if we just blow it up a little bit, that may be too much, but just the detail on it is really amazing. So that was number 12. Now moving on to an opportunity, and I'm intrigued by lightning and storm photography. And this was an opportunity that just rolled up all of a sudden, and conditions changed. There was a big thunderstorm that came in, very slow moving, with a big electrical component, and I just had to get out that night in the town where I live. And this is one of the images that I captured of lightning, and I think it's really neat. In a way, I was trying to find areas where I could frame a composition and capture some lightning and some of the clouds of this storm without indications that we were in town or infrastructure or roofs of buildings or that kind of thing. It was just really difficult because, in fact, I was in town. And the thing that I actually, in reviewing the images I took this night, which was in September, the end of September, when I took this, I really liked this. Now, lightning is not striking this pole or the insulator on the pole, but it certainly kind of looks that way. And this was just a great, in my mind, for me, this was a great lightning photograph to take. And this was taken with the 15mm prime lens f1.7, ISO at 100, and a half-second exposure time, which actually is pretty quick for capturing lightning. And so I was really fortunate in a single frame to capture, you know, this kind of detail in the cloud-to-cloud lightning transfer that was really going on all around me. I mean, it was just a huge, beautiful electric storm, and it makes for a great image to look at and to talk about. So that's number 11. Now this next image, number 10, is one of my favorites, partly because sunflowers are a great subject matter. This is late in the year, so this is not spring, this is in the fall. So this was taken in September. This was some of the last native sunflowers that were growing. I was out on a ruck one day and happened across a series of sunflowers. I took a number of photos, but there were still some bees that were doing their thing, and this is one of them. And it just turned out for me to be a great photo. And there's probably a lot of people out there looking at this and, you know, talking about technique and what I could have done different, and that's great. But for me, this was a great photo. Really got the subject, I think, entirely captured here the way I wanted to capture it, which was some detail of the bee, and then the secondary subject being the sunflower itself. And then even off in the corners, you can see some ancillary, even though there's a lot of bouquet, you can tell that, you know, there's a lot of other sunflowers and greenery and things around. And so that gray, sort of gray-green backdrop, predominantly in the back just makes for great contrast for the sunflower. And I just think it really makes it pop and it makes it work, and it's a beautiful picture. So that's my number 10 for the year. And this is number 9. This is a pretty simple photo. Again, these ones that we're going over first, until we get up to the very top, they're not really ranked. I mean, I do love this photo, and it is going to be in my wallpaper set that I'll probably make available to the followers of the FrostySith channel through an email sign up once we get the website fully functional. And I guess what I really like about it is, you know, kind of the serenity, the color palette, and the way that the flower pops there in the photo. And this is, you know, just the natural color scheme. You can see over here to the right, although it's quite a bit muted, but there's another flower just starting to pop out over here. So if you look around in some of these, it's pretty interesting, but obviously the main focus is the flower. And then I also really liked, you know, how this kind of took you diagonally through the center of the screen of the image. Some people are going to say they don't like the composition, and that's okay. I don't mind at all. I like the composition. I think it really pops. It gives me a lot to look at. I immediately can go to the main focus and look at it, and it's a lot of contrast. Here's another flower coming up. So it just makes my top for the year. So that's number 9. Okay, and a lot of people may not like this image. I love it. These are sandhill plums, and so I talked, I think the first image we talked about in this video was an image of intentional motion capture of some leaves of a stand of plums where all the fruit had already dropped at that time. But this photo was taken early enough that it still had ripe fruit on it, and this was taken with the 12 to 60 millimeter, set at 60 millimeter focal length, ISO 100, f5.5, and 1/50th of a second shutter speed. And what I really like about it is the separation between the immediate foreground, so this blurriness in the sticks that are closest to us, and then I like the bokeh, the blurriness of the back. So we have this fruit, we have other sticks and other leaves in the back that are blurry, and we have blurriness in the front, and I think that really creates depth of what we're focusing on in the middle, which is how that was. So in particular, the center of the photo, these 3 berries and the sticks, and these are actually plums. So these 3 plums and the immediate sticks and stems that they're connected to are in focus, and that is the focus of the picture. And I just love it. I love the color palette that's in this. I just think it's a pleasing image to look at. So that's number 8. Number 9. I love this image too. This was taken this summer on our Lake Louise trip, where Frosty, Jen, and I hiked up and spent the better part of a week in the Wind River Range doing some backpacking that was photocentric. And so the goal was really to get away from the hustle and bustle and be in the outback, and then just spend some time trying to understand all the equipment that I brought, how much of it I would really need for an extended trip and how much I wouldn't. And it turned out I took a lot more gear than I needed. I used a lot less equipment in aggregate, which is good, because this coming summer in 2020, plan to go back and do a much more extended backcountry trek. So, 60, 70 miles over, 6 or 7 days, and, really get remote in the Wind River Range. And now I know a lot of equipment not to take back with me because I'm just not going to need it. In any case, one of the areas that I spent a lot of time, and I think I've got at least 2 images in, so this is number 7, and so I think in the top 7 I have 2 images that are from this. And I took a lot more really beautiful pictures, but 2 of them made the top list, and this is one of them, and this is part of a series of falls coming out of Lake Louise. And we're looking up, obviously, upstream. I think this is a single exposure. It is a single exposure taken with a 15mm prime lens at f2.8. It's ISO 100 and 1/30th of a second shutter speed. And the thing that I really like about it, not only can you tell that there's a lot of water, even though the water is lower this time of year than, say, June or July, when the glacier melt is still, hasn't crested. So it is lower, but there's still a ton of water coming down through here, and you can see that. You can see the complexities. We've got water coming from here, water coming down here. It's a very powerful image, and being there, certainly helps. But the other thing I really like about it are these moss patches and the patches of light that are coming in. The light was pretty harsh when I was taking this. However, I was getting this sort of dappled light coming through from the side. So the sun is up over here to the right. This is late in the day, say 3 or 4 o'clock, I think, in the afternoon. And we're getting these patches of light that are coming in and just hitting some of these moss patches on the rock, and just kind of like green fire, just firing up. Instead of being everything is this dark green, I mean, it really made things pop. I mean, look at this right here. It's just great. And so, I love the image. It's a big image. This is not a tiny stream. So that's why I made the top, and it got thrown in here at number 7. This is a photo that was also taken this summer on the Lake Louise Trail. We're actually down by a creek, and this is a young aspen grove. And I just find this image serene. I think the color palette is calming. The light that was coming through at the time that I took it was just kind of amazing. I like how the top third of the image is really dominated by these green leaves. The center part of the image is dominated by the vertical aspen trunks, and then the bottom portion, these trunks kind of blend in and then become dominated by the green of whatever this local, I assume it's some kind of a riparian grass, and but absolutely just amazing. I just find it a serene, sort of relaxing, calming image. So that made number 6. And let's see, that was also taken with the 15mm ISO 100 on f8, so that it got some depth to the image, in focus depth. Number 5. And this is probably not the best technical picture, but I like the picture. It made the top 6. This is number 5. This is Mushroom Rock, one of the rock features exposed at Mushroom Rock State Park in Kansas. This was an incredibly foggy morning, which I love. I think it adds to the ambiance of the photo, that most of the trees in the background you just can't see, and the ones that you can over here on the right are just kind of peeking out. Probably wouldn't have hurt my feelings any if the fog was even thicker than this. It's hard to find a composition in this location to do something with this tree, but my goal here was to get the remaining, I think this is goldenrod, is what this is, but it's some sort of flowering grass weed thing that's yellow in the foreground, and I really just wanted to try and create an image that would be pleasing to look at, if nothing else, on a screen as a screensaver. So we've got the yellow here in the foreground, you've got some of these grass seeds that you see here in the orange, then obviously you have this sandstone column that's supporting this well cemented concretion of sandstone on top of it, and you can see some other concretion sitting back here in the background. And I got a really good photo of this one once the sun actually came all the way up, and it sort of made the inside, this is actually hollow over here, and made it glow, but the sky was so bright and harsh looking through it at the time, I didn't include it. I may be able to work on that in development later and get it in there, but you know, I think this works for me, and it certainly captures, it's an interesting photo, if nothing else. Now we're really into the ones that I kind of ranked and put in order, the top 4. And this is a lovely picture. This is from Wyoming, from this summer. This is the real sky. This is a single exposure photo. This is not blended or stacked with any other photos. It's very simple. Not sure I did much processing to it at all. And this is ram's horn. And it's just a great picture. I took a series of pictures as these clouds were moving through. They were actually moving very quickly. And you know, I decided to select the one that my eye really liked the best, had part of the mountain in shadow, and I think the reason that was from the cloud. So you've got this cloud, this is east over here, so the sun's coming up and it's actually casting a shadow down on the mountain from this series of clouds here that have the dark bottoms. And the images that I looked at where this had moved on, where there was no cloud, it just almost looked fake. It didn't look genuine enough. And I think this photo, this is a single exposure image, and it's just great. I think it really captures the mountains here and the lake here in the beginning, this stream flowing into, I think this is Julia, and then of course the glacial till here in the middle, and I just think there's great separation. And then I left a lot of the sky, and that's just because this is a vast area. You know, when you're out here in the Wind River Range, it's big, and I just think it works better with more sky. So having the top third predominantly be blue, I mean, it certainly works for me. I also like how the image is crisp all the way back. So I mean, it's sharp. You get the sense of sharpness all the way back. This was taken actually with the 12 to 60 millimeter lens, set at 60 millimeters, ISO 100, f8, and 1/200th of a second shutter speed. One of my favorite pictures, landscape pictures of the year. Now this one I do like a little better. I think there could be several reasons for that. One, the subject matter is pretty obvious. The lighting on this is excellent, so it's not harsh white, you know, midday light. It's in the morning. You've got low light just starting to hit across the top of the mountains here, so all these shadows are because the light's coming in at a low angle. Here you're getting a lot of shadows on the mountains. You're getting some of the highlights pulling through the Absaroka area over here, and it's just lovely, and it's sharp, and so I like that. I mean, I don't think there's a reason in this case. I think if the boulder here in the foreground or if the background were blurry, the image just wouldn't work for me, because then there would just be too much focus on the tree, And really it's the lighting on the tree that does it for me, along with the boulders and the colors. I just think it's a wonderful picture to look at. I considered, you know, trying to edit out this dead limb here, but the reality is I think it doesn't take away from the structure of the photo. It's not distracting, it's not crossing something else in the image. It's just kind of a part of life, right? And had it been obstructing something else, maybe I would have tried to clone that out, but I didn't. So again, I mean, this is one of those pleasurable images where, you know, there's no stacking, there's no stitching, there's nothing complicated going on here. It just happens to be a great photo that I love. And if you get out and move around, you don't have to run, you can walk. In fact, you know, slow and steady is the way to go, and really to see more things when you're outside versus, you know, taking your, you know, day-to-day fast-paced schedule, you know, into the outback with you. Over the years, I've learned that it's just much more enjoyable to really slow down, almost to the point where it's unbearable to slow down. But that's really when, you know, I find I get the most enjoyment. So number 2, so that last one was number 3. This is number 2, and this is arguably my favorite photo of the year. And I say arguably because it's ranked number 2, so I do have a more favorite photo of 2019, and this one was taken higher up on the falls coming out of Lake Louise this summer, so in August. And I absolutely love the photo. This is earlier in the day than the one that you saw that was downstream of this, looking up earlier. I think it was slide 7 that we looked at, photo 7. And I just love this photo. And I love it because it's obvious that it's a waterfall, right? And you can see a lot of different things in the water. So the shutter speed here was 1/60th of a second. And so it's interesting that in some situations it looks like the water is frozen. And in others, you know, it just looks like it's moving. And you've got areas that aren't white water. There's actually so much water moving in here, and there's little pools and swirls, and this area right here is not white water at all. It's just like a big solid mass of water moving. You also have water on the edges here that are just kind of spilling out and filtering through this moss. And so you can see they don't have a white water component in these areas because the water has slowed down enough on the edges to run through the moss. And it's just really neat. But the other thing that for me that really captured my eye at the time and made me hunker down and try and compose this particular image is really mostly over here on the right side of the image. And in fact, I considered cropping this differently so that it was a vertical, but it doesn't really work because you don't get the sense of where this is. So if I cropped off 2/3 of the image to the left, it just changes the story too much. But all this backlit, so you're getting reflection off the water that is hitting the moss from below. So you have light coming in from the top, and actually at this point in the day the sun may be over here actually, and so you've got some dappled light coming in and hitting some of the screen, but you also have this reflected light coming in from the bottom, reflecting off of the white water and back up under some of these overhangs and really making the green pop. And I just thought it was captivating to see. It was almost a mystical area to look at. If I had to do it again, and I didn't notice this at the time, I intentionally made this blurry. So that was just part of the composition. I just thought it would be too distracting if everything in the foreground was in focus. And so, you know, I've got this boulder here with some moss on it that's not brightly lit. And so I set the depth of field such that this was out of focus and everything really starts getting in focus over here and beyond. And one of the things I didn't notice at the time, and again, it's because I was moving too fast. The light was changing, and I was really wanting to get this panorama captured. And this is a panorama. So I shot, this is very high def, a lot of pixels, shot in a vertical panorama series over to here to kind of capture all of this and capture the story of what was going on. But one of the things I didn't notice was this mushroom right here, because I do think it would have been very interesting to have the mushroom in this area right behind the mushroom, you know, in focus in the image, and it's not. So if I had to do it again, I would probably try and slow down and capture and just notice things like that. And of course, when you're in the field, you know, you're not working on a very large format 4K monitor. You're working on the screen on the back of the camera, and some of these things you just don't catch. And so if you don't slow down enough to catch it with your eye, you just may miss it. So that's number 2. So now it's time for my number 1 pick, my favorite photo of the year, and that is, let's zoom out, it's this photo. This is not exactly an outback photo, so this is front country photo on a ruck. There is a subject in the photo, and I just love the photo. This is in the spring. This is one of the first images I captured with the Lumix G95 that I really liked. So I'm still actually figuring out, you know, where are all the controls on the camera when I took this photo. And I took a series of photos here, and I like the subject matter. I like the person on the path marching forward. It was a very windy day. Looks like they're wearing a cloak. The scale of the lamp post and the contrast of the lamp post with, you know, the springtime trees that are in full green. So, you know, I just love it personally. I love the message and the story that you might imagine of what's going on, you know, in this photo. And I think, you know, there's several different stories that could be unfolding in this photo. And that's one of the things I really like about it. So not only does it catch my eye, is it captivating? Some people may say, well, you know, the lamppost is off to the left, it should be framed differently. This is what I got, and this is what I liked, and I still like it. I love it. I can't tell you what it is about the lamppost exactly that I like, but I do like that it's there. I would not clone it out. I wouldn't compose it differently if I had to do it over again. The horizontal format doesn't work because of some of the other distracting things in the image. I considered taking out this light pole back here. See, this looks like a telephone pole, but in fact I think that's a security light pole. But I didn't, because, you know, I wanted to leave it as natural and capturing the moment as possible. And, you know, this series and discussion is really about, you know, outdoors, getting up, getting out, living a little, staying healthy. And that's really what this channel is about. And, you know, I think this photo does it. And so I don't normally include photos with, you know, people in them. But this one just works, and it happens to be my very most favorite photo of the year. And this was taken in June. So I think I had the camera. The camera came out May 31st. That's when they released the camera, May 31st, 2019. And I got it like the week later, so they shipped it, and I got it and started using it. So I had the camera a couple of weeks when I took this, and, you know, I've got it set up to do a very large scale print. And I think what I'll do is probably have this printed to canvas and make a large sound panel for my office out of it to try and, you know, just make the recording sound in this room better. by making a sound panel with it. And so instead of just, you know, the foam panels that you see a lot in people's offices, you know, actually having a large, you know, several feet by several feet sound panel that has one of my photos on it. So that's it. That is my top pick of color landscape photos for 2019. I do have a separate series of black and white images that I've done and have put together. And hopefully, if I can find time to get the FrostySith website fully operational, we'll get an email list together, and for people that subscribe to the email listing, you'll have access to a desktop theme, FrostySith desktop theme with the 2019 best pick photos on it. So that wraps up the video. I wish everyone a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, or a Merry Festivus, whatever you choose. And we look forward to having you keep tuning in 2020. And that's it. So Merry Christmas. Remember, get up, get out, live a little. See ya.